Welcome. Today's webinar is Mentorship for All, How Leading Institutions Embed Mentorship Across the Student Journey. As we're getting started, your audio is on mute as you join us. We recommend that you adjust your video layout to speaker view so you're able to see both the presenters today and also the slide deck, the presentation. We have a panelist style presentation for you today, and we'll put the questions that we're asking our guests up on the screen so you'll be able to follow along that way. We'd also love for you to chat your name and your organization. You can drop that right in the chat. We have a large group today, and we're so excited to see where everyone is calling in from. So please don't be a stranger to use that chat feature. And speaking of that, we'd also love for you to submit any questions that you may have in either that chat box or using the Q&A. Both features are turned on in Zoom, and we'll be checking those throughout the presentation. And then finally, if you like what you hear, please let us know with reactions. We love the engagement factor here at Mentor Collective. So use those emojis. Let us know what you're thinking, how the messaging going on is resonating with you. Our discussion today will be moderated by Mentor Collective's account executive, Erin Callison. Erin has several years' experience here at Mentor Collective and is a wonderful partner to both of our guests today. So excited to hear more from you, Erin, in just a second. And our guest panelists today are Dr. Ron Darbo and Jordan D. Pentima. Ron is the Chancellor and Chief Academic Officer of Penn State Altoona and the Associate Vice President for Commonwealth Campuses. He is a physical organic chemist by training and a fellow of the American Chemical Society. He spent over 25 years in higher education leadership. Before joining Penn State, he has held executive roles at Commonwealth University and the University of Arkansas's Fort Smith. Throughout his career, Ron has secured over $2 million in research and infrastructure grants, and he has mentored over 80 students, consistently championing initiatives that bridge the gap between academic rigor and student success. Ron holds a PhD in organic chemistry from Johns Hopkins, and we're so thrilled to have you here today with us. Jordan is currently serving as Executive Director of Mentoring Programs at Florida Atlantic University down in Boca Raton, Florida. Jordan is currently pursuing her doctoral degree at FAU, and she also holds a master's in higher education leadership from FAU and an undergraduate degree in elementary education from the University of Central Florida. Jordan serves as adjunct faculty within the Department of Educational Leadership and Research Methodology in the College of Education. She teaches within the Leadership Studies minor, and she also serves on the board of directors for the Boca School of Autism. Welcome, Jordan. All right, to kick us off today, we're going to start with a poll to better understand what your needs are in the audience and how we can better direct the conversation to make sure we're matching your needs. So you'll see a poll pop up on your screen asking about what your biggest strategic focus is right now. You can select up to 3 of those choices. Maybe you want to launch a mentorship program, expand to new populations, scale mentorship, increase student engagement, measure program impact. Maybe you're considering leveraging AI or technology for mentorship or something else. And if there's something else, we'd love for you to add a short answer in that comment box at the bottom. I'm seeing a lot of answers. Wow, quite a bit about increasing student engagement, measuring program impact, and scaling efficiently. And great, I'll end it there. Thank you, folks, for a great response there. I think you'll really enjoy the conversation today. We will be talking about how to increase, engagement and impact, expansion, and how to launch efficiently through scale. So we'll be talking about that today. Great.
All righty. We're going to get started just to give you a quick roadmap of where we are headed today. We are going to start with talking about establishing mentorship as a universal institutional pillar. You'll hear us talk a lot about this, how institutions like FAU and Penn State Altoona have really thought through the multi-phase approach and going all in to mentorship. We'll talk about the why. At both of the institutions, we'll talk about an executive mandate that led to these mentorship initiatives. And finally, we'll end with talking about sustaining the ecosystem and the future of mentorship. So, moving us forward, as we work with institutions across the country, we see a reoccurring pattern, the program trap. Most universities treat mentorship as a niche perk, a one-off program reserved for small groups of students and specific cohorts. It's effective for a few, but it leaves other students who could benefit from mentorship, stranded. Today, we're shifting that narrative. We're here to discuss mentorship as infrastructure. In the modern university, mentorship shouldn't be a program you opt into. It should be a universal layer of the student experience, just like Wi-Fi, advising, or career services. It is the social fabric that holds the student journey together from orientation to graduation and beyond. And today we're talking about mentorship as a strategic priority. The question for leadership is no longer can we do this, but how do we resource it as a permanent strategic lever? Before we look at the mechanics, the how, we must understand the mandate, the why. Why does a chancellor or a president decide that of all the students, that all of them deserve a mentor? To answer that, I'm joined by two leaders who didn't just launch a pilot, but they built a culture. Jordan DiPentima has led a 5-year evolution of Florida Atlantic University's system-wide mandate, and Dr. Ron Darbo at Penn State Altoona took an all-in approach from day one. Ron, Jordan, thank you so much for being here. Let's start with an overview of each of your initiatives. So, Jordan, you're up first. Tell me more about presidential mentoring at Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody that is joining from online. So Aaron really hyped me up. There's a lot of pressure to live up to this 5-year evolution, but in short, mentoring has really been engraved in our culture here. It started way beyond that 5-year track, but about 5 years ago is when we started having really intentional conversations with mentor collectives specifically. And we said, we have a bunch of mentoring programs happening in silos. But we want to get to a place where we can take it and scale it. And at that time, it was really pockets of mentorships in those silos. We had something called a council where we attempted to bring together all of these programs around one table, but it was about a third or a fourth of everybody's job description. There wasn't really a dedicated team to give back to what mentorship looked like. And Mentor Collective was something that we had to present to our leadership and really explain the why behind this isn't how we need to partner with them. This is why, and it's going to work. I think that was the biggest selling point was, okay, but is it going to work? So when we got in front of leadership, we did something that was a little bit like a pilot at first. We wanted to focus on our freshmen. And then we have 3 years of the past data that really showed that not only did our freshmen persist, they retained at a scale that was not what we were used to. And we could actually focus in on student success on campus and not so much, thanks to Mentor Collective, on making it happen behind the scenes. So Dr. Fairman, our Vice President of Student Affairs, his quote, I think, really echoes that. It allowed our greatest resource, our people, to spend more effort and energy on direct student support. So then, about 1 year ago, our new president came into Florida Atlantic, and they came in with a vision in mind. Presidential mentorship was something that both him and the First Lady really pride themselves on. She has run a nonprofit mentoring program for a long time in the state of Florida. And so they came in and they were ready to just not only jump on board, but bring all those silos together. And this new vision is that mentorship doesn't end for a student. It actually continues all the way from freshman year into when they're an alumni and they continue to give back through a never-ending cycle. So the Presidential Mentorship Program officially launched, what is it, Aaron? About 1 month ago. And Aaron and I have been meeting, I think, nonstop since the beginning of January in this new evolved office on campus that I am now spearheading. So Lots to come, but an exciting first month of launch.
Thanks, Jordan. And yes, it has certainly been a whirlwind few months. We're going to transition and talk about Penn State Altoona. All right, Ron, same for you. Tell us more about your mentorship initiatives on campus.
So it's interesting how well. Let me just say good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining and for your interest in this program. Jordan's description very much just sort of hits the nail on the head for what is happening or what was happening at Penn State Altoona. I arrived on the campus as chancellor about 3.5 years ago, and in my conversations with faculty, staff, and students, it was very much the same thing. There were little pockets on campus doing really good work in the mentorship space. And the challenge I think we were having was that it was not coordinated. It was happening in silos. People were not sharing best practices. And there really was no really good way to sort of quantify or measure, right, how well the program was doing. There was sort of anecdotal information, which, though valuable, does not make it quite as compelling. And to me, the simple idea is if you're doing mentorship and you have a sense that it is working, I think there's a moral, ethical, there's a fiscal incentive for trying to figure out how we make it scalable across the institution. I'm lucky in the sense that I was introduced to Mentor Collective a long time ago. Before I even came to Penn State in Pennsylvania, I was in Arkansas. I was a dean in Arkansas. And we were also working on mechanisms to increase the persistence of students. And we were engaging in conversations with Mentor Collective very early, but then I changed positions and came to Arkansas, so never got a chance to execute.
Hmm.
And when I came across Mentor Collective again a couple of years ago, I was just thrilled because it aligned so beautifully with our intention to, increase students' sense of belonging, to increase their persistence to graduation and so on. And one of the things that was interesting is that faculty and staff who were engaged in mentoring were getting such joy out of the process. But again, it was limited to just those chosen few. I'm fortunate in the second sense that I didn't have any other decision makers other than myself. It's good to be chancellor of the campus. And so I did articulate the concept with my leadership team, had conversations about how each unit could interface with the project. We shared it in great length with the faculty and the staff who were thrilled about the idea. Same thing with our alumni and several of the business leaders. And it became very clear to us that we could decide to do a pilot and impact a certain group, first year students, seniors, and so on. Or we could just go bold, and that's sort of my typical approach anyway. And we decided we'd do it for everybody. And so we split it into mentorship for incoming students, where they would be mentored by upperclassmen, third and fourth year students. And then we'd have our third and fourth year students be mentored in a sort of pre-professional sense by faculty colleagues or by alumni or business and industry. And so we launched the strong start for entering students and the finish strong for our students in the third and fourth year. My hope is that when we look at numbers, fall to fall and so on, the fall to spring numbers that looked really good. I'm hoping the fall to fall numbers are very similar. Penn State Altoona is one campus of many campuses of Penn State. My hope ultimately is that we would be a test case for then broader implementation across the Penn State ecosystem. I've been thrilled with the participation of our students, both incoming and more senior students, of our alumni, of our faculty and staff. I get really good comments from people about the work that we're doing. And there's a lot of joy about the fact that there is a broader culture of mentorship across the campus.
Thank you so much, Ron. I really appreciate you kind of calling out this aspect of joy and really going all in on day one. We can move to the next slide. We're going to talk a little bit more about the systemic shift, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Ron, because that's exactly where we're headed, and we can move ourselves forward. So, Ron, you talked a little bit already about how you decided forget the pilot, let's go. And I'm wondering if you can share with us your thinking behind that. Why was it vital for you to consolidate these efforts into a single visible pillar, rather than letting them kind of play out for a few more years as fragmented entities?
Yeah, because you weren't getting the full bang for your buck, right? You had people laboring, very, very strongly in certain silos with very, very localized, miniaturized support structures, right? And so their efforts were not getting the level of results that they could have, right? That's issue number one. They weren't speaking to each other, so there was no mechanism for sharing best practices, for identifying roadblocks or pain points that one group might have experienced, but another one may have had, a solution to. So that was not happening. And as I shared, I think if I were to estimate, less than 20% of our students, maybe
Hmm.
15%, were actually getting the benefit of mentorship. And I remarked on this earlier. I think if it's working for one subgroup, I think there is a moral perspective to make sure that as many students as possible had the ability to experience the benefit of mentorship. Plus, quite frankly, as all higher ed is experiencing now, we were looking to try to enhance our enrollment numbers, recognizing
Hmm.
that the biggest part of enrollment is actually what I call re-recruitment, right, or retention.
Hmm.
And the intent was to do both things from the qualitative perspective, provide all of our students with the opportunity to have a shoulder that they could lean on, a sounding board, someone who could, sort of shine light on the pathway forward or the pathways forward, someone who could be a good resource for navigating the campus and navigating the world post-campus, right? So we thought we would try to create a mechanism where we were exposing this to all of our students. I love the phrase you use about it being a pillar, because quite frankly, a pillar is something that keeps an entity above water, if you will, right? And in some ways, I view Mentor Collective or this enterprise as both an umbrella because it's brought everything under the fold without supplanting the good work that was happening. In fact, we were supplementing it, right?
Hmm.
And brought it into one comprehensive structure, brought it into one comprehensive, familiar, common language, the way in which we are able to see real time conversations that are being logged between mentors and mentees, recognizing immediately when there is an issue that's affecting a student and being able to leverage the support that the institution offers. I mean, that is something that you were unable to do prior. So, in many ways, I see it as both an umbrella covering mentorship across the campus, but also a pillar in upholding our land grant mission of student success.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ron. I really appreciate the thread between the individual student and the intervention to the larger retention, and re-enrollment and re-retention aspects, and then also this piece of like, well, we're not learning from each other if we're all kind of living in our own silos. And so, really appreciate kind of taking that holistic approach. We are going to move forward to the next slide. Jordan, I'm curious to learn from you. FAU's journey, like you mentioned, started long before 5 years ago, but has really been, propelled forward over the last 5 years to reach its current universal scale. How did you convince the institution to move from a singular initiative to a system-wide model, and what were those conversations like?
Yeah, so originally about 3 years ago, I sit on a group that has really become a lifeline on this campus of how we operate and function and make really quick and meaningful decisions, called SWAT, which sounds really intense, but it stands for Strategic Work Group Ascending to the Top. And what that group does is brings together representatives from all of the different divisions in the ecosystem of the university who have a mixture of leadership and then boots on the ground staff. And then that group is really the deciding factor amongst what gets funding for student success and what doesn't. So our CFO sits at that table. I worked really closely with our former director at the time of new student transitions, and our director of assessment and research. And we came up with, okay, where are the gap areas? What students are not benefiting from mentorship on campus? Are they retaining? And if not, is mentorship the intervention that's going to help them retain? And for us, the answer was yes, because they were missing a sense of belonging largely. And most of the students that transferred out, usually in the sophomore year, was because they didn't feel connected to anybody on this campus. So um, we got funding for basically a 3-year pilot. And then when our new leadership, when our new president started about a year ago, it's really easy to convince someone about mentorship when their spouse is a CEO of the largest nonprofit mentoring organization in the state of Florida. So it didn't take much convincing there. She actually was like, oh, this is only a third of your job. Let's make it an entire office. Awesome. So having that support and having the freedom to be a pioneer in something that you believe in so deeply was just a springboard of making this a really university-wide success in the past couple of months. So we have our program very, very similarly structured to Ron, where we are still keeping the peer-to-peer model because without it, I really think you do lose that sense of belonging for students. And then growing and evolving it into that alumni and career ready state come junior and senior year.
Thanks, Jordan. And I appreciate that you both have this really, supercharged leadership experience where leadership are really driving this change and this pillar of mentorship. I am actually curious if you want to go to the next slide just to kind of shift things a little bit because it is a top-down approach. How are you kind of navigating, all the other stakeholders? You mentioned all these other programs and all these other folks on campus that have really been the blood of the mentorship initiatives previously. So, what are those conversations like, and how are you kind of shifting that mindset into culture of mentorship?
Yeah, I can answer briefly so that Ron also has time to share on this, but this is all I've done. I felt like a salesperson the past couple of months of because when someone hears a new terminology, especially someone, for example, we have one of our colleges who has been running a successful siloed mentorship program for years, like 20 years at this institution. And them hearing, what do you mean it's going to evolve under, I liked the way that Ron described it, this umbrella term. And I've just had to say, like, this is a positive, right? This is belief from the leadership. This is an office dedicated to mentorship. This by no means is meant to isolate or remove any existing programs, but rather bring us together to speak the same language. And when you just approach that conversation like that and not force upon new titles or new positions or anything like that onto people and make them feel like they're a part of the vision and have them help you build this out. So the Mentor Collective team meets with all of those programs across the campus. That really helps build the really a sense of belonging for the staff also that run these programs and then can feed that down into the students' belief of what this is.
Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate you kind of sharing that is no easy task and lots of conversations. Ron, I'm curious as you close out kind of year one of this initiative, what have you learned through working with others on campus?
So I think in our case, we already had folks who were sold on the idea of mentorship because it was working, in those subspaces. And in some conversation, we said it is because of your success that we're looking to see if we can replicate this more broadly across the institution. I don't think we had a difficult time convincing faculty and staff, or for that matter, even students, that mentorship should be something that should be leverage across the campus. I will share one other thing. When I first came, I pulled together a group of diverse, I mean, pick the category, students on the campus into what I call the Chancellor Student Success or Association. And I would ask them what would you have wanted when you first came on the campus? And the number of times mentorship came up as an issue was compelling.
Hmm.
And so it wasn't difficult to leverage that to the campus community about the need to do it. Our alumni board, our folks in our community who feel the campus belongs to them, they were keen to invest their time and energy. And so it was not really a difficult task, at least for us, to get this going. I think people were. Plus, when you add the fact that it likely can add to your retention numbers and your persistence to graduation, that is a compelling argument in and of itself. So you've got the quantitative piece, the qualitative piece, and the fact that there was already a rich legacy of it on the campus, what made the journey easier, I think, for me, for which I was very grateful.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that it was, this community effort that was coming from kind of a variety of ends, both the students saying that they wanted this and faculty really being excited and energized by engaging with students in this way. We are going to shift a little bit and talk about the models that you all have designed on campus. Getting us started, a first year student needs belonging. We've talked about belonging a little bit already. And a senior needs professional social capital and networking skills. How do you design your mentorship to evolve alongside the student? Ron, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And so, as we had shared earlier, we had sort of split it into the two groups, as you described. So the entering students who are, and you could, so all of you to understand, many of our students are first generation, many of them are underrepresented minority students. Many of our students are Pell eligible. And they're coming into college not fully armed for the experience. And I've always long held that the only reason a student should not progress is it shouldn't lie in the fact that they don't have a sense of belonging, right? That should not be a reason why students do not progress. And so what we did is we asked junior and senior students at the campus if they were willing to mentor one, two, three first year students. We also asked our faculty and staff to be engaged in the process as well. Several administrators, myself included, raised their hand to take mentees. We all went through sort of a training exercise as to what the relationship is and what the relationship is not.
Hmm.
And I want to appreciate Mentor Collective for creating that script for us. And we're also told that we need to do some formative assessments, not just wait till the end of the semester, but do some formative work that would be sort of vectored by reports about your interactions with students, your conversations. So you log conversations and it walks you through did the student talk about difficulty in courses, right? And what should we be doing? Did they talk about being homesick? I mean, just a gamut of possibilities. And when does intervention need to happen, right? Because what Mentor Collective would do is basically send it out to the right person on campus to leverage the resources. And so there was that work done for the first year students to let them know they were not alone, that there were resources available, and what they were experiencing is not unique to them. There's nothing wrong with them. It's common when you step on a campus for the first time. For students who were in need of what I call pre-professionalization, the juniors and seniors, we structured it so that they would have mentors who were professionals, usually in their field of study or in their desired, career path. And we're fortunate in this community to have quite a few folks who raise their hands as mentors. A lot of alumni, I mentioned, a lot of businesses or Chamber of Commerce or Economic Development Board, people raised their hands. The tricky group we had were the second year students who were not first year or ready to go out. And so we had faculty and staff and alumni do a lot of work mentoring that group. One of the tricky things at our campus, and I'll just share this before I stop, is that Penn State Altoona, like many of the Commonwealth campuses, a lot of our business is 2+2. So many of our students actually matriculate to University Park at the end of their second year. And so that has two consequences. There are not a million third and fourth year students that you can tap into, But what was very interesting is that we reached out to the ones who were at University Park and asked them, would you be willing, either virtually or otherwise, to to mentor incoming first year students? The number of them that raised their hands to do that was just gratifying. In part because they wished they had had that when they had matriculated, but clearly because they saw the value and wanted to make sure they gave back.
Ron, I really appreciate the intentionality that went into your design. I think that is just it speaks to how you're listening to students and thinking a lot about how they are evolving across their experience at the institution. Jordan, I'm curious to hear from you, if you can share more about how you're supporting students at critical points in their university experience.
Yeah, honestly, ditto to everything Ron said. Plus, the other piece I would add is we are basing the presidential mentoring program really intentionally around the Board of Governors metrics. One in particular, our student body is very similar to what Ron described. 40% of our students come from low income, a third are first generation. One in particular is the 4-year graduation rate, and something we noticed in our former programs is it expired at the end of their first year. So our freshmen would go through a year of mentorship and then they would get a thank you for participating. Here is your end of program survey. Best of luck in your next 3 years. And that's just not how real life works. And we can't measure career readiness based off of that strategy. So we have really designed this entire new launch around the evolution of the student. So the program doesn't really end for them. It's more of a end of survey that says, hey, is this working? Is this a good match? Okay, let's evolve now into sophomore year and get you somebody in the community started. So whether that's a staff member, whether that's alumni, we're doing a lot of intergenerational mentorship as well with our Lifelong Learning Center on campus. So that will start in their sophomore year and then continue, right? So by the time that they graduate, they actually have this web of mentorship who can speak upon the career readiness metric or whatever we may be looking at that time.
I appreciate that you both have called out sophomores. I think they're often a little bit of a forgotten population on campus, and increasingly, I know, are becoming very obvious in metrics that they are worthy of these types of investments in ways that maybe, other ends of the student body have historically benefited from. Really appreciate that. We are going to move a little bit forward and talk. And Jordan, this question is for you because I know you have personally felt this pain, but many institutions attempt to build mentorship in-house using spreadsheets and homegrown tools. But they often hit a ceiling where they can no longer scale. Due to that administrative burden, how has Mentor Collective allowed your institution to scale, and what would be lost if you tried to do this yourself without infrastructure or technology?
I think the whole program would be lost without the scaling capability. The only reason we pitched to SWAT at the time that we would be able to do this at scale and save. So at the time, 3 years ago, we had about a third of our freshman population, which was about 1,500 students participating in what we called first year connections. And that wound up saving hundreds of students when we ran some of the data in terms of retention. So that was a third of my job responsibilities at the time. Mentoring was the third office that I was overseeing, and we still saved hundreds of students. So when I met with our president recently about the presidential mentoring vision, I was very clear that we are doing this with it being a third responsibility. If we make this an entire office and we meet with Mentor Collective as frequently as I would like to, this would really build out to include this web of mentorship and save not only the freshman students, but actually look at what some of these successful mentoring programs are happening, which some were referring to as specialty programs on this campus. What are they doing that's successful for their pockets? And how do we grow that to include the entire population? And we can do that with the support of the team Mentor Collective. And for those watching, if you're new to this Mentor Collective team, like these are just two of them. We have like dedicated staff that we meet with throughout the week that help us run this at scale. And it's almost like another full-time employee being added to your office and your plans.
Yes, thank you so much, Jordan, for calling out that certainly Mentor Collective is far greater than just Jen and I, and appreciate that call out for all the staff that make it happen every day. We are going to move us forward and talk about the why behind this universal investment. You both have kind of touched on this in various ways, but Ron, this question is for you. We know that high level leaders are balancing a lot, especially this year and in the last few years. How did you frame mentorship so that it didn't feel like a competing initiative, but rather an engine driving strategic priorities?
I think in two ways. As I mentioned, we're fortunate on the campus that there was already a rich legacy of mentorship, right? And so it was not an unfamiliar concept to the campus. Um, the other point I would make is that, and I sort of it was alluded to by Jordan. When you look at it from the strategic perspective, because we recognize the need to enhance on enrollment numbers, and clearly the bigger component of enrollment is actually retention, right? It's much easier to retain students than it is to go find new ones. And we were able to show, and this I hate to break this down into numbers, but we
Please
know
do.
what the tuition of a student coming in, right? Because Penn State is funny, you've got to go into the top and it filters down to the campus. And we're able to show if you increase your retention numbers by 20, that's a salary and fringe of a faculty or a staff member, right? You increase that by 10, that's a travel budget for an entire department. And so you can feel it on a personal level when you actually hold on or retain more students. So there's a financial imperative in the work. But there's also the ethical and the moral imperative, right? You're having students come into the institution who don't know which end is up, and they need some hand-holding at the beginning, right? They need some hand-holding at the beginning. And we were always meant to be gateways, not gatekeepers. And the days of sink or swim, that's well beyond higher ed. In fact, that is a perspective that got higher ed in the hole to begin with. So we've got to change the way that in which we think. You have students who are about to leave or getting geared to go out into a world, and they're not sure which end is up when they leave either. And so it's important to make sure that students have those key resources beyond the content knowledge and the mindset and the skill set. It's just the confidence to be a great employee when they leave, right? And having people who have walked that walk, who have made that transition, bumped and learned the hard way, telling them that this is how I did this is what the pathway forward looks like, and say it's okay if you fall and skin your knees, once or twice, get up and move on. And so it wasn't competing, it was simply incorporating things that were already going on into a cohesive, comprehensive framework. And the point Jordan made, and I'll just make it again, the, the, it would have been impossible for my team to do this on our own. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the bandwidth. It would have failed abysmally. It would have stayed at this sort of micro level and not gone anywhere. It would never have caught fire. But the Collective folks, and they're not even paying me for this, the Mentor Collective folks are fantastic partners. They're thought partners. They light a fire under us when we're a little slow to get things back to them. And they're understanding, they're compassionate. You can feel their passion in the work. And I love, reaching out and logging in to indicate how my students were doing. And I can go back and see what comments I made 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and watch their progression. It is a strategic priority because we are built as higher ed to be a pathway for students with talent and ambition to do well in the workforce. What Mentor Collective does is help to make the path straight, to remove hurdles and bumps. It is one of many tools that I think every institution should have in their arsenal.
Ron, I can't say, and there's so much to say based on what you just said, but I also can't say anything at all to top that. So we are going to move us forward. Thank you so much for articulating all the ways that it fits into both this financial imperative and also strategic priority. we are going to wrap up and talk about sustaining the ecosystem. We know that that culture of mentorship requires not just finances, but it also requires visibility. So this question is for you, Jordan. You have been incredibly creative at FAU in making mentorship highly visible. What are some of the most effective and practical strategies you've used to make mentorship branding visible to students and faculty and the broader community now?
Yeah, I think Ron described it really well of like it was already successful. It was already a part of our framework. Running orientation in my past life was a plus because I could just get in front of every incoming student and family and sell mentoring. So the students know that there's some sort of mentorship program at this point. This new office that is launched, mentoring programs, now lives under the Division of Government Relations and Economic Development. That has now allowed us to really brand this into the wider community, which was not familiar with this up until this point. So now that the students have an idea, we have pushed student recruitment to the summer because we aren't really worried about that with the work we've done with Mentor Collective up until this point. And we've spent really the past month since this official launch using now the connections through government relations to sell this to the community and say, this is a low stakes way to get into our community. And hopefully it develops a long-term pipeline, right? Hopefully we find a community member and our branding for the university is that Florida Atlantic is a hometown university. And there's so many people that drive by here every day and haven't even been to campus yet. So the hope is that they get connected, they run a business in the local area, they get connected to a student through a mentorship program, and then they become, maybe they take classes through our lifelong learning program, maybe they donate to an athletics program. So it is much more than just a one simple conversation between a community member, an alumni, and a student. It is a lifelong branding that we are hopefully building in connection with what we already have pumping out through the community. So a lot more to come, but that has been done really intentionally over the years in waves. We started with students, we sold it to staff, and now we're moving into the community, and it's just going to become common nature, hopefully, in the next year as a part of what we do at Florida Atlantic.
I love the concept of a lifelong brand that sort of outlives a singular student journey. And moving us along to the next question. Uh, Ron, in a similar vein, getting hyper practical here. We know that culture is only as strong as its sustainability. How do you ensure that this initiative goes beyond just this year or just these next couple of years, and it's deeply resourced and embedded into the budget so that it remains a core priority as leadership transitions or there are shifting institutional priorities?
Yeah. So in the short term, that's relatively easy because I'm the budget executive on the campus, right?
We love it.
And so that makes it relatively easy. But my belief is that we will see. I go back again to both the quantitative data, the year over year retention rates, right, and in comparison, that it becomes so compelling that not only am I able to um, encourage the other campuses in the Penn State system to adopt it, but that whoever sits in my leadership chair when I leave sees the data ahead of them and says, this is worth the return on investment. I also want to mention, so there is the fiscal return on investment, and it's something that you want to plant the seeds in and reap the rewards down the road. But beyond the ROI, there is the VOI, right? There's the value on the investment. Anytime you can have students feel that they belong to an institution, and the point Jordan made is spot on. Institutions aren't islands, right? They belong to a community. And their connections with alumni, their connections with business leaders, that means a lot. And it's not just the students who benefit, but you're asking alumni to give back in a way that may have been unfamiliar. You're asking business leaders to invest their time and energy and deepen the connection they have with the institution. That's a value on your investment. And the last point I'll make is that a conversation I've been having on my campus since I arrived 3.5 years ago is very simple. Save one. right? If every
Mm.
single faculty member and staff member on this campus were able to save a single student, our budget deficit disappears. We're in a much riper financial situation. Save one. And it is the work of every single person on the campus. It is the work of third and fourth year students for first year students. It is the work of alumni, of folks in the business community, of faculty and our staff to contribute their time, their energy, their feelings, their shoulders to save our students and to see talent. The hair in the back of my neck is standing up. Um, to see talent earn its just reward.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really love this idea. And you both have hit on it a lot today of like mentorship for all is not just mentorship for all students. It is for all members of our community to participate in, whether they are students, prospective, current, or beyond, or our larger community of faculty and community members. So I really appreciate that call out there. Moving us to our final question here today. Could you share, and maybe Ron, you can go first, and then we'll end with Jordan. Can you share how mentorship will continue to evolve over the next few years? We've talked about the future a little bit already, but what's the vision? How do we want to make this even bigger and better in the future?
Right. So what we're doing now is we're going to be surveying our students who have gone through the strong start, the ones who are leaving with the finish strong. We're going to be surveying all of our students about their experiences. So in fact, we've been asking them if you could change anything about the mentorship experience, what would you change, right? What would you add? What would you delete, and so on. We're asking our faculty and our staff who have been doing it, our alumni or business leaders, about their own experiences. And so we're going to try to use that to make fine adjustments as is necessary. We're also going to be collecting data so that we will be able to share this with the faculty and staff and with others in the community about the fiscal success in terms of what the program has been able to engender. We're going to use data to inform the direction that it takes. And as I said earlier, what my sincere hope is, we're going to get to a point where the value, both quantitative and qualitative, of the exercise is so compelling that whoever sits in my chair next and that chair after, whenever faculty and staff come to the institution, becomes such a pillar, I love that phrase, of the institution that you dare not remove it because the value is so intricately linked to the presence of the program.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for mentioning the feedback loop that this is, iterative and you're planning to kind of help it grow and change as needs change for your student body, and as well as budget and strategic priorities change as well. Jordan, what would you add?
Not a whole lot more. We are hoping to get to the place that Ron just described. This is our building year. We are launching all of our formal matches in about 1 month's time. So we are building a culture around feedback, getting feedback from small groups, alumni board members, community members, and just seeing what they're enjoying about the experience, hosting a lot of trainings. And then hopefully this time next year, we're talking about our first year of celebration. So only evolution to come after this year.
Absolutely. We're here for it and excited for it. Moving to the next slide. First of all, a huge thank you to you both, Jordan and Ron, for sharing your visionary leadership with us today. As we wrap up the conversation, I am struck by one theme, and that scale is a choice. Building a pillar of mentorship is a choice. Whether you take 5 years to build a universal mandate like FAU, or you go all in from day one, like Penn State Altoona, the shift from a program to a pillar is what fundamentally changed student outcomes. You've seen today that mentorship doesn't have to be a nice perk or a nice to have for certain students. It can be an infrastructural support that it supports your entire student body. But as our panelists highlighted, you can't lead a culture if your team is buried in administrative work or spreadsheets. To move 100% to move to that 100% reach, you need a partner that provides the specialized infrastructure to make it possible. This is what we do at Mentor Collective. Both Jordan and Ron pointed this out today. We provide the engine that allows leaders like you to focus on the human connections that drive retention and belonging on your campus. If you're ready to move away from siloed programming and towards a system-wide model that aligns with your president or chancellor's top priorities, we are here to help you design that journey. I'm going to pass it back to Jen for our closing poll. Thank you both.
Great. Thank you so much. This was just an incredible conversation. I'm feeling really energized by this. So, Ron, when you said that the hair sticking up on the back of your neck, I feel that way. I just feel such joy coming out of this event. So, thank you both for your perspective. And I am hopeful that mentorship happens and it with all the folks that have attended today. So, on that note, there's a poll that has popped up for you if you'd like to learn more about how Mentor Collective could support mentorship goals at your institution. Please click yes, and we'd be happy to connect with you and chat more. We're also, there's an option to say you're already a partner. I saw so many partner names in the chat and in attendance today, and it's wonderful to see that and to have them engage in this conversation. So I would love to hear from you more there. As you're finishing up, I also want to share what upcoming events we have here. We are going to host in just a couple weeks another webinar event with the leaders from Pima Community College about how mentorship drives community college success. I'll drop in the chat the sign up for that. We'll also have leading higher education analyst, industry expert Glenda Morgan, and as well as student voice. We'll have a peer mentor speaking about their experience as well. So a really interesting panel will be there at that event. And then later in May, you can find us at the 1890 Centers of Excellence Spring Symposium in Arkansas. And then in June, we'll be in Massachusetts. Erin actually will be back hosting an event at the Success Symposium at Greenfield Community College. All right. So with that, we're going to wrap up here. We will send out a recording of this event and a follow-up message. And again, I just really thank everybody for your time, and especially our wonderful panelists, Ron Darbo and Jordan DiPantima. We're so thrilled that you could join us today and share your message of mentorship and what that's done for both of you at Florida Atlantic University and Penn State Altoona. And we hope everyone has a fantastic afternoon.